Hi, I'm Janice Switlo, and today I'd like to introduce you to a new term, maybe new to many people, and that's something called retrocession. Now, there's a lot of people speaking about how Indigenous land has been stolen, taken, give us back our land, things like that. Sometimes the language becomes a bit dangerous because of the meanings that can be conveyed by some of the terms used. Some people still rely on Section 35 and use, whether they realize it or not, use terms like, Aboriginal title, which now carries the meaning of being Aboriginal right of Aboriginal title as defined by and determined under the Section 35 doctrine, which also allows the quote-unquote lawful way to push people off of their land. So I'd like to, and as I have been doing at times, introducing terms that are more appropriate to the situation at hand and encourage people to become familiar with those concepts and start to use them. Retrocession means the restitution of an ancient title to a true owner. Such an act confers no new title, it merely recognizes and confirms a previously existing title in another. That to me would be true reconciliation, whereby Canada, remembering the head of state of Canada, the Crown, currently Her Majesty the Queen, has already recognized underlying title in the Indigenous nations, and that was through the treaty process making, wherein those treaties, for example, treaties 1 to 11, very clearly show that only an estate or interest in the lands of an Indigenous nations is being obtained. And that's found with these key terms, key words, if you will, in the treaties that say to have and to hold. You'll see that in all leasehold agreements. And that conveys that this is an interest beneath. Now, having, and I've said this many times, having commenced a treaty-making process, recognizing Indigenous nations, and having put those in place, she's bound by a duty of fairness to continue the same process. But of course, Canadian governments don't like that. They want full underlying title to be held by the Crown, so that under the constitutional monarch situation we have, that would then mean Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, for example, could control the whole thing. Provinces, of course, at that point would have underlying title in the name of the province. So obviously they have great interest in seeing to it that Indigenous nationals abandon what they have. So, as I said, I'd like to remind of this concept that it's not the first time that people have acted unlawfully on the lands of other people. And if Canada and British Columbia in particular, and the difficulties that have arisen as a result of Indigenous nationals reminding, hey, this is our lands, you need our consent, and you don't have it. You don't have any permissions from us in some cases. Now, Canada provinces are busy saying, well, these chiefs have signed off all these agreements, and in these agreements are representations like this is done under the auspices of Section 35 doctrine, etc. Reminding again, and people are becoming more familiar with the concept that the actual authorities of chief and council as enacted through the Indian Act are not the authorities granted them by their own people under their own laws. And it's no longer possible to convince the public, either domestically or internationally, that there are no Indigenous nations. They never could be nations because, under the doctrine of discovery, they weren't Christian. They weren't seen as, because of the color of their skin and their religious practices, they weren't seen as developed human beings. There were some earlier stage of evolutionary development. None of that is defensible today. So again, retrocession, the restitution of an ancient title to the actual owners. That's what we're hearing about. That's what we're seeing that people are attending and reminding, whether they're blocking streets or railroads, They're saying, look, this is our land. We have title. It's not a matter of Canada granting title, Canada granting things. It's a matter of Canada confirming its recognition, and not based on a domestic doctrine, but in actual legal fact. This is an existing title that has been in place since time immemorial. It's considered an ancient title, but the fact of that just simply means it's been longer standing than any interests that Canada has been able to lawfully obtain through treaty making that the Crown has entered into. Thank you.